Jimmy, I'll go back to you with this, and Roger, would love for you to follow up on what Jimmy says. Is what's next for Ricardo Pepi? I mean, what has he shown you so far, Jimmy? Obviously, we're getting a little bit more of a sample size from him over 90 minutes. Just generally in the way that we play, you see long periods of the game where he doesn't touch the ball. Is that a knock on him? Is that a fault to him? Is he continuing to get better to you, Jimmy? I mean, tell me what your take is on Ricardo Pepi as our number 9 at the moment.
Well, obviously the future is incredibly bright, everybody. I think he's shown more than enough that he has a little bit of that being in the right place at the right time ability, which is hard to teach, right? So he's always floating around, he's sniffing around. And I think we could argue, we've seen some of the best strikers in the world. I don't know why Wayne Rooney came to my mind, but he could have a really quiet game, then bang, he scores the 89th minute winner. And you're like, Wayne Rooney's the best. I love that guy, you know? And I think Pepi has a little bit of that where he's still doing a lot of the thankless work. He's still pulling center backs out of position to maybe create pockets of space for the guys underneath in the half spaces, which we talk about a lot, where Pulisic, Aronson, Gio Reyna, that's like when they like to set up shop and get the ball and turn and run at the back line. So if Pepi's still pulling people out, I think that's going to be important. What people need to take into consideration, though, is teams are scouting us. It's not like, Pepi was unknown ultimately when he came into the team. They heard about him. They got some young player. He could have gone.
He wasn't unknown to me, Jimmy. He wasn't unknown.
I know that.
He was already my favorite player ever.
Well, I know you got your Ricardo Pepi pajamas, and you wear them every night, and I appreciate they're onesies too. I really appreciate you taking that extra step to get onesies. But what I wanted to say with regard to Pepi is he's going to be scouted now. They're going to figure out a way to stack him up. They're going to figure out a way to slow him down. They're going to figure out a way, and that's going to be the next step in his evolution. How can he still have success despite these other teams now taking more action to slow him down? And what I remember about the Mexico game, with the Nations League in particular, they did an excellent job of stacking up Pulisic and Serginho Dest in the Nations League final. Those two guys were very quiet. We remember the iconic photo and the great penalty by Pulisic, but he was pretty quiet that game, all things considered. And we did have to pick up the ball. He was going all the way back to midfield. So Mexico know what they're doing. They're super savvy. They're well coached, whether you like Tata Martino or not. In my opinion, I think he's great. And I think it's going to be a big challenge for us. And with regard to Ricardo Pepi, that's going to be his big new obstacle is how do I still have success, even though teams are now preparing for me?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think with Pepi, watching him play, I don't know about you guys, but it feels like he plays bigger than 6'1". I thought he was taller than that when I was looking it up. He's got such a big frame. He's only going to get stronger. If he could be someone who can consistently, shield off defenders, receive the ball, with his back to the goal and be able to provide, even more kind of combinations to kind of open up space. I think, the sky's the limit there. I think in regards to his future, I mean, I think certainly after the season, he'll be gone. Obviously, so many European clubs after him. I was speaking to a couple sources last night, not at liberty to say what league or what club, but there's a couple teams that are inquiring about him that haven't been reported that I think would certainly be potentially massive for his development and minutes playing in top flights in Europe. I think, when it comes to FC Dallas and speaking to people who have, been at the club involved in negotiations, it's looking like probably between 12 to 15 million it would take for a team to land him, which is obviously a really big transfer fee. I see someone who, if he can get to a club in Europe that, obviously can provide those minutes to young players. We've seen Ajax linked. We know, Dortmund, I haven't seen them linked, but just, an academy like that, teams like that have such a history in developing these guys. I think, getting those minutes early on and not going to one of those massive clubs where, he could ride the bench, the more he can play, the better. And, I think, I was looking up some information for a story, and, we talked about Josh Sargent and him kind of being that future number 9 at one point. Pepi came in September and has as many goals as Sargent since 2019 for the national team. So I think, he's the future, and the future's now, certainly.
So wait. I got to jump in. Roger, tell me Newcastle. Let's chump change for Newcastle now. Why don't they just bring him in, baby? Let's go. That's my club. We're turning things around.
Yeah, it's not Newcastle. That would be interesting. I would just say it's a club in Europe that hasn't been reported that, I don't think it's one that would excite you as fans in the sense that, they're not in European competition. But they are a team that's been creating a lot of buzz so far this season, and hope to be able to report on more soon.
FC Sheriff. FC Sheriff.
Imagine that. But we'll see. I think certainly his future's in Europe before long, and there's no shortage of clubs who are interested.
Sorry, Heath, I interrupted you twice. You go. It's your turn.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that a stepping stone club is what he needs. I mean, for him to go and sit on the bench and watch other people play at a big club, is I don't think that's the right move. I think he needs to go and get valuable minutes and learn what it means to be a pro and cut your teeth somewhere else as he starts to get used to the culture, potentially living by himself. All these little things do matter. And so I think Ajax would be amazing. If he ended up at Ajax, I'd be thrilled. But that's it.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, when it comes to these, other than the Netherlands, if we were talking about like a top 5 league in Europe, Jimmy, is there one for you where you would like to see his style fitting well, one where you would like to see him go?
There's something about Portuguese teams that, especially like a Benfica or even Porto to a certain extent. I don't know if he necessarily fits their style, maybe Benfica a little bit, but I don't know why I see him in a Benfica shirt, but they seem to do a very good job of developing players and then moving them on to bigger clubs. So that
for a lot of money.
Yeah, right. That would be of interest. When I think about that, going to a mid-table team, we see it with Busio, or actually in the lower part, and Tessman going to Venezia. That's just going to be a goddamn struggle. We see Sargent going to Norwich, where he's not going to really be able to display what he does well outside of running the channels and trying to press with Timo Pukki. I mean, that's pretty much it. And he gets maybe 3 touches that are actually going forward and trying to do something positive. So yes, you're in the Premier League, but what are you actually doing and how are you developing as a player is something completely different. So there's a couple of those teams. And now you said top 5 leagues, and Portugal's not in those, but I'd be interested to see where he goes, because Reggie Cannon went to Boa Vista in Portugal, and we don't really hear from Reggie Cannon all that much anymore. So it's interesting times. Yeah. And I know he's been hurt, but
it has to be to a club like Dortmund, an RB Leipzig, somewhere where there is a developmental plan in place. Obviously RB Leipzig's not as interested in selling players, but they've certainly sort of evolved into being willing to move players on when their time, but also a place where you continue to get looks, right? What you don't want is a young player like this to get his 1 or 2 looks and then be a lone player for the rest of their time there because the pressure is too high, or because of managerial change, or because of the pressure from just being at that club. But I always like Ajax, PSV. We've seen with Josie Altidore the amount of goals he scored there. We saw Michael Bradley, the amount of goals. I think he had 18 in one season as a deep lying midfielder or late running midfielder. And so I like the idea of the amount of chances they get. And within that league, usually they're like, okay, we'll buy him for 10, 12, and we'll sell him for 20 in 8 to 10 months. And I think that's a huge lift. And then when you got Bundesliga, you have a better quality week in, week out. I like to see him there. But I do like your shout, Jimmy. Even Sporting, you look at the amount of goals that a Bruno Fernandes or whoever scored in those leagues. There's goals out there, and I want that to be the next step for Ricardo Pepi.